Hello everyone, it's Channin here for Honeybee Stamps. In today's video, we are going to create this colorful card with this really fun background that combines Distress Oxide Spray and Diecuts. I'm going to start with the Whimsical Spring Flowers die set. This is a really awesome set. It's a layering die set, but I'm just going to use some of the flowers and actually one set of leaves. So I'm going to pull off all the large flowers, some of the smaller ones, and then just that leaf that cuts two at the same time. Arrange them here on some white cardstock and then ran them through my die cutting machine. I'm going to need a bunch of flowers and leaves, so I'm actually going to die cut some more. I end up die cutting that pair of leaves 5 times total. I die cut a lot more of the smaller ones to kind of fill in the space because we're going to use these flowers to create a background. So I'm going to arrange them here over an A2 panel of heavyweight cardstock, and my flowers and leaves were also die cut out of the same heavyweight cardstock, and I'm just using that panel as a guide to line everything, just to get everything to fit nicely on that panel. Once I have all my flowers and leaves arranged, I'll then grab a piece of press and seal, press it over all of my die cuts, and then pick it up so all my die cuts are now on that press and seal. So I'm going to flip this over so I can see the back side of my die cuts, and then I'm going to grab these really awesome foam squares. They're really small. I'm going to grab these and just place one on the back side of all of my die cuts. This is going to add that dimension. It's going to give this some lift because this is basically a tone on tone background. Even though it's rainbow, it can kind of all blend in. This little dimension will help it pop a little bit. It'll be subtle so you can see the flowers, but not too busy that'll take away from our focal point. And for these last 2 tiny flowers, I just cut one of those foam squares in half diagonally, and then that made a smaller piece perfect for those little flowers. Now I went ahead and removed the backing of all those foam squares. I actually did it while I was putting them on there because I just thought that was a little bit faster. And then just pressed this onto my A2 panel that I showed earlier. Now I have a cardboard box here and I'm ready for my Distress Oxide Spray. I'm starting with picked raspberry, going to shake it up really good, and then I'm going to grab my corner and just spritz it a couple times to get some of that beautiful picked raspberry on there. Now I'm going to turn it again and move on to my next color, which is Spiced Marmalade. Spray some of that on there. It's super simple. And then my yellow is Fossilized Amber. This is such a gorgeous color. These sprays are so beautiful. They oxidize kind of when they overlap with each other, which adds some interesting looks. This is just such a fun and unique kind of background. My green is Peeled Paint. My blue here is Mermaid Lagoon. And then I will finish up with a tiny bit of purple, some Wilted Violet, and just spritz that last little spot of white with that purple. And now I'm going to let this dry, but I'll hold it really quick to the camera. You can see how the oxide starting to play a little bit. Really fun. Okay, I'm going to let that dry, and while that's drying, I'm going to grab this super sweet spring mice set. I love this set. I've used it earlier. I just can't get enough of it. It is so adorable. This set is great for your focal images. Almost all the images in this set would work for your focal image. So I just stamped this super cute mouse holding this bucket of flowers in Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink. Then I started Copic coloring, started with my light gray, which was C1, and colored the whole body of the mouse except for the ears and the snout. Moving on to my medium shade, which is C3, coloring any place that I think would be in shadow, kind of to the right of the mouse this time. And then my darkest, which is C5, just coloring the very edge of that shadow. Now I'm going back through my shades, so I have my medium shade here, kind of blending out that transition between the medium and the dark. And now I have my lightest marker blending out that transition between the light and the medium shade, and that will give me a nice gradation over the mouse. Now for the ears and snout, I'm starting with a tan, which is E30, coloring all of the ears and snout with that, and then I'll move on to a pink and color just the inner part of the ear and the little bottom part of the snout, and then even make a little rosy cheek. Once I finish that, I'll grab my colorless blender or 0 and just blend it out a little bit, that transition between the pink and the tan. Now I'm going to move on to the bucket, starting with a really light blue. This is BG10. I'm going to color the sides of the bucket as well as the inside of the bucket. This is what I'm hoping to make it look kind of like a white bucket. Now I have a darker blue, going to color the very inside of the bucket just to make it look like it is has some dimension, some depth in there. And then I took my Color of Splendor and kind of blended it out a little bit, softened those edges. Now we're moving on to the flowers. I have two purples picked out, a light, which was V15, and my darker, which is V17, to add a little shadow on that purple flower. My next flower, I'm going to start with R20, and then I will move on to my darker shade, which is R22, and use that kind of feathered stroke to really get that nice gradation over the flower. Then I will move on to an orange combo for this flower, YR00 first, and then YR02 for the center of the flower. And once I finish my orange flower, I then use that orange to add a center for my next flower, which is going to be yellow. Colored it with Y0 first, and then added Y15 to the center to add a little depth. And then use that Y15 to color the next flower, the center of the next flower. And then this flower's blue started with BG23 as my light, and then moved on to BG15 as my dark to make a nice little gradation over that flower as well. For the leaves, I'm doing two colors as well, starting with YG93. And then I'll move on to YG67, kind of coloring at where the leaf meets the stem. It's a little bit darker than the first color. And that's my finished image. I went ahead and die cut it out with the matching dies, and now we're going to move on to a sentiment. Now I have a sentiment from that Sweet Spring My Stamp set. It says Miss You. I just stamped it in Honeybee Stamps. Embossing and Watermark ink, poured on some white embossing powder. Now I'm heat setting with my heat tool, and then I went ahead and die cut that out with the matching die, which is also part of the Sweet Spring Mice die set. Now I am going to put together this card, starting with this background. Going to add some liquid glue, some precision glue to the backside of my panel, and then I'll just glue it down onto an A2 top folding white card base. Once that is stuck down, I'll then remove the backing on some foam adhesive on my image. I added that off camera, that foam adhesive, and I also added some foam adhesive to the backside of my sentiment, and I'm just going to stick that down as well. And once I stick that down, my card is complete. So pretty simple, but I think very impactful with that beautiful rainbow background and the fun shadows and play that you get with those die cuts and that layering of the spray, of the Distress Oxide Spray. Really cool. And I just think that beautiful little mouse holding the flowers just completes it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If any questions about the products I used, please check out the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.